I was like, I had a question. Like, so what was the reason why Grogu was taken away from Luke again just so suddenly? Was it like, you going to use him in the Rey movie or what? And he kind of just like smirked at me. He's like, I can't say anything about that. Like, but he's making this look at me like, yeah, I obviously think that's going to happen. What was the reason for the changes between season 2 and 3? Well, in the first two seasons, he's like, we had a little bit more creative control. There were a few company changes that really had an effect on our overall creative control in the story. You guys remember when Favreau and there was like this weird rumor going around that Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy had a problem with each other, or there was some kind of tension there behind the scenes. I think it was because they might have started messing with his story that he originally had for season 3.
Yo people, welcome back. Now before I start, let me just clarify, no hate towards Dave Filoni. I want him to do well, but ever since he got that promotion at Lucasfilm, it all just seemed like part of Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm's plan in order to extend her stay and avoid criticism when making trash content. The recent rumor going around is that Dave Filoni will be taking over the script for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. Now, off face value, it makes sense because the Mandalorian now needs to start to connect to the Ahsoka show and all these other shows before Dave makes his other movie, the one that got announced at Star Wars Celebration. It makes sense, but it's not bad to just question these kind of things and look at both sides of the arguments, especially when it comes to Dave Filoni. I feel like the Star Wars fan base either loves this guy way too much and overrates him, or you got the others that just want him to crash and burn. He's done some great work with the Clone Wars, Rebels, Tales of the Jedi, and all the animated stuff in general. That's his lane, and I want him to be leading all the animated stuff going forward. If they do a What If series, for example, then he's the man you get. However, I think he does get carried by the George Lucas cosign. He does understand the lore of Star Wars, so I'm not going to doubt him in that aspect. He's more competent than most people working at Disney and Lucasfilm, so he deserves the respect for that minimum. Where I think people get lost is this sense that he's done all of this good work by himself, that he's some sort of god, he's untouchable, you can't say anything bad against him. There's so many people that call him a savior and this whole "in Dave Filoni we trust" movement. I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but what has he actually fixed at the moment, excluding the animated stuff? The Ahsoka show unfortunately exposed his writing abilities. Now don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the Ahsoka show, but like I've mentioned on the channel before, he ducked and dived out of answering some key questions and just avoided obvious stuff that was plot related, whether it was with Thrawn and Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, basically most of the characters. So there was definitely room for improvement. Also, he does have a track record for grabbing Legends material, which Disney doesn't consider as canon, and just adding those story into his characters, which can sometimes be annoying because it feels like he's copying and pasting George Lucas's work and acting as if he's created all these things. Again, we just need to analyze and question what's going on. I'm not doubting his knowledge of Star Wars or how he understands the lore or his attention to detail, but for me, in terms of live action, he's the guy that you bring on board once the main script or the main body of work is written. And then you grab Dave, he fills up the script with his magic, his knowledge, while also changing some stuff if it makes sense. But he can't do everything by himself at the moment, as we saw in Ahsoka. Now let's have a think. When have we seen someone write the main story, have the main vision, and then he gets help from Dave Filoni? Oh yeah, The Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. Disney Star Wars' most successful product in its 12-year history. Now, I think Jon Favreu is the main guy behind all of this Mandoverse, and he gets ignored by fans, overshadowed by Filoni a lot. I feel like he borderline gets disrespected. Both of them together is what Star Wars needs, obviously with a team of people around them that they like and they want to work with. As I just mentioned, just look at seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. A lot of people have written Jon Favreu off because of the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian season 3, but what people fail to mention is that Kathleen and those corporates ruined his entire story by making Mando and Grogu reunite in the Book of Boba Fett, the very next show after they had separated. He didn't want that. Who actually wanted that? It made no sense to the story to bring them back the very next show. By doing that, you make season 2 of The Mandalorian irrelevant and useless, you make Mando's character arc irrelevant, and you make Grogu and Luke waste their time. Yeah, you end up with, oh, Grogu learnt his powers back, but in the grand scheme of things, how useful is that right now? I think because they forced Jon to unite the Mandalorian and Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett, he kind of just gave up. He felt uninspired because they tampered with his story for the Book of Boba Fett and his story for the overall arc of The Mandalorian in one move. They'd done 2 birds, 1 stone, basically, in terms of crushing his story. When you see all these Jon Favreu interviews, you can just see how much of a Luke Skywalker fan he is. He's a massive fan. I know for a fact he had a massive plan for Luke and Grogu, which would have tied into the sequels and the Mandalorian story going forward. But as Kathleen Kennedy does, any uprise of Luke Skywalker hype, she makes sure to destroy it, even if it means destroying Star Wars' own hype. That's how much she hates Luke Skywalker for some reason. Speaking of people Kathleen hates, let's not forget, before the Book of Boba Fett came out, Gina Carano had been fired by Kathleen Kennedy, and Jon Favreu was in charge of writing the show Rangers of the New Republic, which starred Gina Carano. This show has obviously been cancelled ever since she got fired. So let's break that down. That's 2 shows, aside from The Mandalorian, that they've ruined for him, which would have helped him to flesh out the whole timeline, the whole galaxy, do a lot of world building, and it would have given us an in-depth view of everything happening with the New Republic, with the Imperial remnants, with Mandalorian, with Luke, all of that stuff. No, they just killed all of that off. Season 3 of The Mandalorian was basically Jon Favreu having to change his original story to write something that included Grogu, as well as adding some story from the Rangers of the New Republic stuff, and that's why I believe that we got that whole Dr. Pershing episode. He's having to juggle all these things at the same time that he didn't plan for and make sure everything makes sense, is still continuous, with very limited time and content. He's having to balance all these things and keep changing his story to suit Disney's shit vision, which isn't what he wanted, and unfortunately his name gets put all over the product. He has to take hits for Kathleen and Disney. He's basically being sacrificed, and if he says anything about this to the public, to the media, he basically gets fired, so he can't win. I feel like if Dave Filoni is left to do this whole Mandalorian movie script, the same will happen to him. And I've been saying since they've got the promotion, don't be surprised if Lucasfilm uses his positive image, his positive clout to carry on making shit content, and then Kathleen and Disney can just blame Dave and the fans if anything goes wrong. You'll have the fanboys who are too scared to criticize Dave and won't say anything. Then you have the people that already hate Dave, just trying to cook that guy even more. The most important part would be that the people that are on the fence, or the people that don't really care, they will start to turn on Dave Filoni, and then he'll end up sacrificed. Overall, there's something very dodgy happening behind the scenes all round over at Disney Star Wars. The leadership is a joke. They don't seem to know what they're doing. Everything they seem to announce is either dodgy, weird, or too good to be true, especially with their track record. That whole Rey movie thing, is it delayed? Is it not delayed? Are they going to cancel it? What's going to happen? Then they shove in this Mandalorian movie to kind of deflect from all the negative PR that the Rey film had. I already know they'll use Luke for a cameo role or something to hype up the movie, and then he does fuck all in the actual movie unless the fans actually have a massive reaction to him, or he does something amazing in whatever he appears in before that movie. However, it will just mostly be for merch so that Disney can make more money off of Luke Skywalker. Fans literally want to see Luke, and Kathleen would rather the company goes broke than to give us Luke Skywalker. But yeah, as always, let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comments. Who do you trust at Lucasfilm? What would you do going forward? While you're at it, drop a like on the video, sub to the channel. I'd massively appreciate it as we are on the road to 1k subs. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.